should not have to decrease the quality of your life because you're getting older. We've been fooled into thinking that as we get older, we're supposed to be hunched over, we're supposed to slow down. I've got to eat less, and the less I eat, the faster. Now, most supplements that you see on the shelves, some kid in his garage made it. My name is David, and tonight, obviously, this is our VIP nutrition meeting. And we did have a couple of questions come in. One from Darlene. She was asking, during the hot and summer months, obviously, which are coming up, that it is curbing her appetite. She has zero appetite because of the heat. And she makes a lot of smoothies, Ninja Creamer. Those are good. Just gave me the craving for ice cream. But when it's too hot, what should I eat? Now, typically, one of the things that is very difficult for myself personally in the summertime is to stay consistent with my nutrition. As crazy as it sounds, as much as I love eating, and that heat will curb your appetite. And, before you know it, you've gone a few hours without eating. One of the things that we preach here is that about every 3.5 hours, your body dips into what's known as your amino pool. If there are no nutrients there, your body's going to go and pull those nutrients from your bones and your muscles, and that will slow down your metabolism. So in order to prevent that, if you're at or about your caloric count, you don't want to add any extra calories. It's always a good idea to add an amino acid to give your body something to pull on rather than taking those aminos from your bones and muscles. Now, that is typically a rare case. You're probably, if you're out in the heat, you're just probably halfway through the day, maybe towards the end of the day, you're probably not at your caloric intake. So my suggestion is to do things that are cooler. And let's expand our definition of eating. What we need is nutrition. In the summertime, I love to make like a smoothie with some ice or something like that in it, just to have it as a milkshake. You guys already know that I'm a huge fan of Ultimate Muscle Protein, not only because it's a great balance for your proteins, it's a casein protein, which is a slower release, but also it's the best tasting. Even doing things that are cooler like Greek yogurt is a great substitution. Hey, take your Greek yogurt and put a scoop of protein in it. That's not only, of course, upping your protein, getting it up to about 30 grams in that one sitting, but also you're working on your digestive enzymes with that Greek yogurt. So that's always a good go-to. Of course, your fruits and vegetables, particularly those that have a lot more water in them. So, your cucumbers. Of course, another good thing, if you didn't want to do a fruit or a carbohydrate, nuts are a great substitute for some meals in the summertime. Because, of course, they're a little bit higher in fat, but we're moving a little bit more. If your carbohydrates are in control, I almost think of your fats and carbs on a sliding scale for energy. If I'm a little bit lower on my carbohydrate, I can be a little bit higher on my fat to give my body something to pull on to get a little bit more energy. That's a great question, though. But, keeping it light in the summer, and I am to a point, and I teach this to a lot of my clients, just set your timer for every 3.5 hours to make sure you put either a fuel or an amino acid in you to keep your body from metabolizing itself, which it will do. As you well know, the body, if it needs something, it's going to go get it. And it's got several ways in order to do that. So don't be a cannibal. Don't let your body metabolize itself. Get a little something in. I tell you in the summertime also, something that's very effective. Obviously, we want to keep yourself hydrated, but breaking your meals into smaller meals. Keep in mind that every time I run my digestive cycle, I've got to use calories in order to do that. There's not much of a difference between a small meal or a big meal as far as how many calories your body will burn. So, for example, if I took, if you're eating a traditional 3 meals a day, I hope no one is, but that's still in order. We want to get as many meals in as possible. That doesn't necessarily have to be 5 or 6 as suggested. Hey, if I took the same amount of food that I ate in 3 meals and divided that into as many different meals as possible, same amount of calories, I'm going to burn way more calories because my body's got to run that digestive cycle every single time I put some food in my stomach. All right. So those are some good ways. Obviously, when it's hot, your body's got to regulate your temperature. The more hydrated you are in the summertime, the more body fat you're going to burn, guaranteed. There is a direct correlation between the two. So, between your hydration, you typically try to get on it earlier in the day so that you can slow feed yourself the rest of the day and keep the metabolism fast. That is a great question. We could have did a whole hour on just that question.
A way to get the amino acids if you need it.
You could do a supplement. I would suggest something that with zero added sugars. Those are hard to find, but natural is always better. Any combination of beans and rice is going to give you all your essential amino acids. Eggs have all your essential aminos. Eggs are great. They are a great source of protein. I always hear Natalie saying it's your cheapest and best protein because it's that casein protein, which is also a slower release. So, typically most people's bodies, unless you're absolutely killing it in your workout like Jen Trudeau, you're probably not able to absorb more than about 18 to 22 grams of protein in one meal. So it really stands to reason to get a slower release protein and also to eat more times per day in order to feed your muscles. Now, having said that, even if let's say I'm a person that can metabolize 20 grams of protein in one sitting, but I just had a 30-gram protein meal, that 10 is not going to waste because your body still got to process that 10. Body's got to work awful hard to process your proteins. And you guys that know me, know that that's one of my major sermons, that when we ingest a carbohydrate, let's say I get 100 calories of carb, my body's got to use about 4 to 6 of those calories just to digest that 100. With your protein, you've got to use 30 out of 100. You almost cut your caloric intake by a third just by eating more protein. Why does that happen? Because your body's working so hard to digest that protein that it elevates your body temperature. Anytime your body temperature is elevated, that hypothalamus kicks in. It's got to be able to regulate your temperature. It takes a tremendous amount of energy per day just to regulate your temperature. In fact, when we think about fat burning and caloric burning in general, the majority, we burn 80% of the calories we burn every day are burnt when you're doing absolutely nothing. That is totally due to your body just regulating your temperature. It works awful hard on a daily basis in order to do that. Meal planning, what is the difference between portions and serving sizes? Good question. I don't think, now I've been in this industry for 32 years. I don't think I've ever had someone ask me that question. Now, generally the way that the industry uses them, sometimes they're intermingling them and they may mean the same thing, but really think of a serving size is what you see on the package, what they suggest that you should eat, or where your federal disclosure box is. When they say serving size, be very careful. That's one of the first things that I look at when I read a label. Here's something that companies do that's super tricky. They will make a product that they say is diet or light or, low calorie. It's the same product. They just change the serving size on the package. Same stuff. People say, oh, well, this is a little bit better for me. Let me get this one. Same deal. Now, but the difference between your serving sizes and your portions, serving size is what they suggest you should eat. Your portion is what you actually put on your plate. And I am pretty confident I don't know anybody that follows those serving suggestions. I want to say that like a little tub of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, I think is a pint. That's 4 servings of ice cream. Nobody eats a quarter of a pint. I'm sure there's a term for a quarter of a pint. Speaking of portions and things like that, one of the things I teach people, know where your triggers are. All right. The way that you go about your business of putting fuel in your body has everything to do with how many calories you consume. An old trick of mine used to be put it on a smaller plate. I just felt like I needed to have my plate full in order to hit that trigger of okay, I've had enough to eat. Or here's one that is totally mine. I have been taught all of my life that there are starving children in Africa. You finish everything on your plate. I had those parents that made you sit at the table until everything was gone. So, right. So I know that my trigger is getting to the bottom of any package. So here's something that I still commonly do, still trying to get over that hump. I'll go to a store, I'll buy a big bag of something thinking, okay, I've got this for the week, for 2 weeks, I'm going to eat on this. I'll sit in that bag, and I promise I won't stop until I get to the bottom of it. Now let's take that same item, let's put it in those individual 100-calorie packs, which good for you to balance everything. I'll have one of those, not a problem. Woo, we're done because I got to the bottom of the package. So it's little things like that about how you're wired, what your relationship is with food is some of the big things that we teach. Have an understanding for it, not out of judgment, not out of being wrong, just having the information and knowing is the process there. So I know where my triggers are. I know that there are certain things I cannot be in arm's reach of. Pretty much anything with chocolate and peanut butter in it. If I'm not supposed to have that, now having said that, everything is within bounds. There are no foods that we necessarily want to stay with. We know things are better for you or that fit it, but if it fits your macro count, have that. Now, one of the things, now I'm an eater. I know that the cleaner I eat, the more food I can have. I love the illustrations of where they'll have a fast food meal with just a hamburger and a shake and maybe some fries. A kid could eat that much. That right there typically is as many calories as most people need in one day. That usually has the fat content for 3 days. And those little calories. So they show that little meal, then they show a volume of clean foods that you could eat that would equal that same meal. You could literally live on 3 or 4 days off of that many calories if you had to, with the amount of food that it would take to equal that if it's a cleaner calorie. Speaking of summertime eating, things like most of your vegetables, your body's got to work harder to get that through your system than the amount of calories that are in that item. So it's what we call a negative impact fuel. So particularly after 12, after 2 o'clock, if you're doing vegetables and proteins, you're probably putting yourself at a caloric deficit, which at the end of the day, we want to be in that Goldilocks zone, which is typically about 250 calories lower than what your body needs for optimum body fat burn. Anytime you get below that, body's kind of interpreting as famine. Anywhere above that, obviously, anything extra that you have, it's more likely to go in as storage. All right, so difference between portions, servings, portions, servings. And here's a mistake people make in their macro counts. They'll count their portions, but not count what they actually put on their plate. You could easily have 3 or 4 servings on your plate. When we say portions, we're talking about what did I put on my plate? My portion was 4 serving sizes. For example, when I eat Ben & Jerry's, I'm eating for 4. And that's one thing. One thing we may want to do is revisit. In fact, next time I do VIP, we're going to revisit reading labels, because there's certainly an art to it. Even adding to that the way that you shop and the places that you go. It's no secret that many of the items that are worse for you are the easier accessible ones. And it still amazes me. I mean, how different. And Jen can attest to this, how different the ingredients are in the same products here in the States as and where they are in Canada or other parts of the world. There's a whole list. Speaking of Wednesday nights, we may do that one day. There's a whole list of about 120 things that are in American cuisine that are illegal to serve to human beings everywhere else in the world. Read those labels. Typically things with a lot of chemicals in them. We want to stay away from those highly processed foods. Good deal. Which brings us to our topic of conversation this evening, which is keeping yourself hydrated, which is one of my favorite topics. You guys have heard me harp on the tripod of fitness, especially these summer months coming up. It is super important to keep yourself hydrated. One of the things I teach on the tripod of fitness, of course, everybody knows you should exercise. Don't have to convince you that. Everybody knows you should eat well. But the third leg of that tripod is your rest. Now, we're focusing on nutrition. The absolute most important component to nutrition is your hydration, bar none, right? You want to make sure that you're, especially in the summer months, there are just so many benefits. We commonly talk about your body's ability to burn body fat and how that is directly correlated to your water, but don't stop there. There are a lot of other reasons that you want to keep yourself hydrated. Heck, one of the biggest being the effectiveness of your workouts. If you are not hydrated enough, The viscosity of your blood is like a milkshake. If it's that thick and it doesn't have enough water in it, that means I can't get as much oxygen into my bloodstream, which has everything to do with how my body burns body fat. That's why we correlate how hydrated you are with how lean you are. I've run this experiment literally 100 times, where I'll have an individual make no lifestyle changes. All we change is the amount of water that they're drinking. We go back and measure their body fat again 21 days later, and it's typically 1.5 points, 2 points down. Just by keeping yourself more hydrated, you could easily, on your same lifestyle, making no changes, you could easily burn a pound of fat. And just to give you a good idea, what's considered an effective exercise program is for a person to be able to burn 1 pound of fat in 60 to 90 days. That's too slow for us. We're well ahead of those curves, but that's considered a successful exercise program. All right, now, you guys have a group of excellent trainers, people who have been there, done that, know all the buttons to push. Ours typically comes in at about 1 every 30 days. Now, don't confuse burning body fat with what the scale says. The scale is a liar. It will lie to you every time. I see many scenarios where a person's weight may actually go up, but they're getting leaner. Now, if fitness was not a business, I would make that happen every single time, because I know that if you gain more muscle than you lost body fat, your body's going to require way more calories to keep it alive. Again, that 80% of the body fat that we burn when we're at rest, if it's got to work on some extra muscle, speaking of extra muscle, 1 new pound of muscle will burn about 250 calories for the first 12 to 14 days. Oftentimes, I get a person in a cycle where we're constantly recreating muscle just to give that metabolism a little bit of a kick. That is enough to, at 250 calories, that's enough to burn 1 pound of fat within that same 30 days that we're talking about. All right. Just like muscle confusion also, diet kind of works the same, but we always want to put our first focus on your hydration, because it makes everything else go. All right. And of course, when we think about your body moving nutrients to different parts, has everything to do with your hydration. Remember, your heart is just an itty bitty muscle that's got to pump through literally thousands of miles of blood vessels. If we just took your fat cells, for example, it takes 2 miles of blood vessels to supply 1 pound of fat. You need 200 miles of blood vessels just to keep that pound of fat alive. Now imagine if I'm a person that has heart disease, if I've been suffering from any kind of ailment, think of how much less energy my body has to expend just because it doesn't have to keep that 1 extra pound of fat alive. Just makes things a lot more efficient. Now you've got more energy for your liver, for your kidneys. Speaking of water, those are your main functioning organs. Oftentimes, a person will lay out an awesome workout program with somebody. They're eating well. They're compliant with everything that's going on. We are aware of their hormones. We're getting that in check. But if your liver and your kidneys are not functioning properly, that decreases the effectiveness of your workout. All right, we want to make sure that we're hitting on all. I don't know about you, but I put in a lot of work. I want to make sure every single effort that I put in, that I'm getting some benefit from it. How do I do that? I've got my checklist. Right? Again, back to that tripod. I know I'm exercising consistently. One of my favorite stats in fitness, 60 minutes of accumulated exercise per week, regardless of how you're getting it in, lowers your rate of heart disease and diabetes by 150%. Right? Consistent on your exercise. Of course, your nutrition, going for natural foods, letting protein dominate your plate. You know, in addition to protein synthesis, one of the other side effects is that getting more protein will lower your inflammation markers. And I am convinced the key to longevity, hydration, keep your inflammation down, keep your body moving. Those are the 3. I know many of you are familiar with those Blue Zone books and studies, and the common denominator always comes back to movement. Always comes back to movement. I mean, we've been fooled into thinking that as we get older, we're supposed to be hunched over. We're supposed to slow down. We can't do it now. While that is half true, you should not have to decrease the quality of your life because you're getting older. I have several clients who are in their 80s. I've had some 90-year-old clients who are moving as well as people in their 40s. I've had people that didn't start exercising at all until they were 70 years old. Never too late to get it. And since we're talking about hydration, the biggest key to restoring your metabolism is keeping your body good and hydrated. Now, while we're on hydration, thinking about just your cognitive function. Your brain, your cerebral fluid is pretty much all water. It's got a few other things in there, but it's mostly water. Anybody who's ever low carb, get a little bit of loopy, thoughts don't run quite as clear. That is totally due to your cerebral fluid being thicker like your blood without water. I mean, things just don't operate as well unless you've got that hydration in you. Now, here's an interesting thing with your hydration. If you are just 1% dehydrated, that has a 10% effect on your cardiovascular system. And that's a sliding scale. You get up to 2, it's not 20, it's closer to 22. All right, so imagine every time you did a workout or did some cardio that you're only getting 80% out of it. That's not efficient. While exercising is important and surely we want to make sure you're consistent, adding that water will increase the effectiveness of your workouts. Here's a good one. So while we're on the topic of water, about 12, 14 years ago, remember everybody's carrying around the little water bottles. It kind of became popular. I was asked by a handful of clients, hey, what's this article that says we're drinking too much water? We don't need that much. It's not as healthy for you and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what are you talking about? Where it shows me this article, I was like, well, that doesn't sound right. Start doing a little bit of homework. As it turns out, there was a study that was conducted. Got to watch these studies. There was a study that was conducted by Pepsi and Coca-Cola. When have those two ever been in cahoots together? Because they were losing money because people were shifting from carbonated beverages and they were drinking more water. So they were like, we got to do something about this. Let's get our heads, I know we're enemies, but let's get our heads together and stop this water craze right now. But I mention that because typically when you see a study, find out how big the control group was. Get an idea of who paid for the study. And it will tell you everything that you need to know about where that information is coming from. And in general, just the food industry, and it seems to be that way. Again, back to the packaging, being deceptive about it. Hey, it's almost like the FDA is in cahoots with these guys. We keep seeing I happen to see an interview about the crew of doctors. Right now we're on the food pyramid. I'm sure that's going to change again here pretty soon. But what they were saying is that the studies that they did and the way that the suggestions that they made, completely different than what was printed as the official information. And it tended to follow the money. Of course, one of the main things, I am not an advocate of dairy. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat it, but it surely should not be a staple in your diet. We are the only species that eats another animal's milk, and even further than that, the only species that drinks any kind of milk past adolescence. Why are we drinking cow's milk? Because, in my opinion, because of subsidies that have been done over the years to protect dairy farmers, to protect industry. One thing is for sure, particularly here, that capitalism outweighs safety. Crazy to sound. Hey, if I'm running a government agency and my job is to inform people, just tell us what's in there. We can make informed decisions. But yeah, you got to become an expert. Some of the things I look at when I read a package is the less things, the better. The more things you know what they are, the better. Avoid things with what I call avoid the osis, sucralose, fructose, lactose. Also, many people don't realize that those items are listed in order of how much is in them. Now, here's another tricky thing that they do. If it is not considered food, they don't technically have to put it in that federal disclosure box. So oftentimes you'll see things that are no calories, that are low in sugar, when in reality, what they're using is alcohol was declassified as a food about a decade ago. They're using alcohol as a sweetener so they don't have to put it in that federal disclosure box. And they can say it's low calorie. Tricky, I know, but heck, we're on top of it.
I have a question about energy and food.
Ooh, yeah.
So today I had a Reiki session on myself, which was an hour. I then did a Reiki session on a human, and then I did a Reiki session on a dog.
Oh, nice.
Now, I know that you need to drink a lot when you do Reiki because it makes you thirsty. Why? I don't know. But why am I so freaking hot and hungry? Like my cheeks are red, my armpits are sweaty, and I want to eat. Like I'm out of food for the day, and I want to eat.
Yeah, well, consider that even though you may not be moving sometimes, you're surely expending energy. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about that. And probably using a little bit more water. Start turning on your smartwatch when you do a session. And
just see what happens.
Yeah, and see the difference. I'm sure you would be surprised at how many calories you actually, because heck, you're emotionally engaged in some same way. If when someone's watching a movie, one of my family favorite things we do, we love football. Go figure. But one of the things that we do when we're watching a game, we're constantly checking our watches because you're so emotionally involved in what's going on. Sometimes my heart rate gets as high as I'm doing cardio. Now, I'm not sweating, I'm not breathing heavy, but I'm surely burning as many calories as I would if I was on an exercise bike or something. So I'm sure just the attention that you're paying. One of the things we know with exercise, if you're engaged in an activity, that lowers your perceived level of exertion. For example, you asked me to go out and do 100 wind sprints, my tongue's going to be hanging out on the floor. I'm going to be bent over holding. But if I did that in a game, which you commonly did, fatigue kind of goes away. Right? So, the more engaged you are in something, the lower your perceived level of exertion. Just like if my knee is hurting, I slam my finger in the door, all of a sudden my knee stops hurting. I saw a super interesting experiment the other day. What they did was you talk about how your mind works with your body, and it can even trick you. They had a fake human arm that looked just like the person's arm. And what they did, they put that arm in front of them, right next to their arm. They put their real arm on the other side of a curtain, right? Over time, your body will tell you that's your arm. So they were poking that arm with needles and doing things like that. That person was literally physically feeling that in their opposite arm. And then the guy would do different things, and he would have someone else that they couldn't see manipulating their hand, and they could feel nothing that was going on. I'm talking, they were taking matches to them, they were putting tacks in their finger, and they had absolutely no sensitivity to it until they removed that curtain. And in your mind, or people who have been amputated, one of their main complaints is they complain about that they have what's called a phantom limb, where they can still feel where their fingers were, where their arm was, just because their body is realizing that, all right, I'm sending a signal out, it's not coming back strong enough, so let me intensify the feeling so this person can experience pain, cold, whatever senses. Yeah, but it's amazing how your mind works like that. A guy that taught me martial arts, I literally watched him have a surgery on his hand where they literally opened up his hand and did surgery. And just out of him being able to control his mind, they were able to do the surgery with no anesthetic. Right there on the point. Yep. Not a problem.
That's crazy.
Now, after he got out of that mental mode, hours later, yeah, it's hurting like crazy. But in that frame of time, heck, I've been in circumstances like that in a game or getting ready for where your adrenaline is so pumping, your sense of pain just kind of goes away. All right. But speaking of pain, women have a much higher tolerance for pain than men. I don't have to tell you guys that. But I'm let these guys know. And I typically tell men, you are not tough enough to be a woman. Good question. Right. Any other questions?
So should I eat before I do Reiki on people then? As if it were like a workout?
Depending upon where your nutrition is balanced, or not eat. Because if your nutrition is pretty good, if you're not eating and you're only leaving your body coming from storage or a quick blood sugar, you'll probably get a benefit out, almost like fasted cardio, which does definitely work. But people should not do every single workout fasted. That's kind of a myth that has been passing. Basically, after a certain point, your body is no longer burning body fat. It'll click over and start grabbing that from your muscles. And the reason why fat is just the most efficient energy that your body has available to it. It literally wants to save it for last. Heck, all the enzymes are burned up. Water comes out when you sweat. Carbon comes out when you exhale. No byproduct to it. Where if you're burning a carbohydrate or or a protein or breaking down muscle that has a byproduct to it. In fact, the byproduct of sugar is lactic acid, which chemically is the exact opposite. Only way to get rid of lactic acids is to add oxygen to it. Same process happens just like your fat. That's why when you're super sore, you go out and exercise, that soreness will go away because what you've done is added oxygen to that lactic acid. Though, in full disclosure, the jury on lactic acid is still out. What we're finding now is that you can actually use that lactic acid as a secondary source of fuel. Some people are in a camp that lactic acid is still the cause of soreness. Most of the scientists have moved from that. So where does soreness come from? I don't know. They don't know. There's much we don't know, to be honest. But now, having said that, there are a few things that ring true. Some stuff we know what we absolutely know. What I absolutely know is keeping it true to what we're talking about today is hydration is number one from a nutritional standpoint. Heck, water is the one thing that you absolutely cannot live without. Speaking of water, and I'm not sure, and we're talking about just frame of mind and how it has an effect upon your body. I'm a firm believer that what comes out of here is what is in here, and that has everything to do with the circumstance that you're in. Now, that's not to say that a bad thing happened, that's because of how I was thinking, but it surely shapes your circumstance. Right? So one of the things here's an experiment that's done. You can Google this on the internet. I'm sure literally 1,000 of them will pop up. In a classroom, the students will have 3 plants. And what they will do while they're watering the plant or even talk to the water, they say bad words to one. You're a loser, you're worthless, use a negative. The other one, they're very kind to. Oh, we love you. You're growing so well. You're going to be such a nice, healthy plant. The third one, they absolutely ignore. The negative one always develops disease. It develops, fungus or things like that. The one that's been positive always grows best. The one that's ignored almost as bad as the negative one. I think that's a super interesting experiment. Even, heck, our bodies are 70% water. I am convinced that certain vibrations and from the way that you think, the places that you go, the music sometimes that you listen to has an effect upon that water in your body, which affects you at a cellular level. We're getting deep in now, watch out. But it surely, heck, don't take my word for it, do the experiment. I think I introduced you guys, it was a couple of years ago. Those I know, the book is, what's it called? Hidden Messages in Water. It's a super short read, very interesting, where this doctor, I think it was out of the Far East, but what he did was he took water samples from different places and froze it, and just the way that those ice crystals crystallized could tell you where that water came from. If it was from a war zone, those crystallizations were all broken up, uneven, other places that or water that he talked to it would crystallize in a way, these beautiful figures that look like snowflakes and different things like that. So of course, as they're doing these experiments, they start applying it to 1,001 different places just to get some good information back and to do a controlled study. A habit that I have is super weird. I'm going to share it with you here today. But when I'm in the shower, I talk to my water. Oh, thank you for cleansing my body. Heal me, allow me to get some extra hydration. Speaking of hydration, because that's what we're talking about. But a great body hack, especially in the summertime when your pores are a little bit more open, is if you feel like you're behind on your hydration, get in the shower. Take an extended shower for a while. You can absorb about a quart of water in the shower. That's a lot. When you're talking, what's a quart, 32 ounces? Now that's a lot of water. Most people have, particularly in the beginning, have trouble getting water in. That's a great way to get it in. Water is a cleanser to you, absolutely. It has everything to do with how your body functions. I mean, think water is your transport system, period. Point, full stop. I can't get nutrients to my muscles without a good level of hydration. Since we got a lot of new people, you probably have never heard this. It's one of my favorite sermons. that I give. But basically, like we talked about, greatest thing about the human body is that if your body needs it, it's going to go get it from somewhere. If I'm super low in my carbohydrates, my body's going to break down muscle and literally turn that into sugar if my brain is. Your brain can only run on, is the only fuel they can run on is sugar. That's why people get loopy, not only from hydration, but lack of your carbohydrate. If I'm not eating enough, my body's going to get those amino acids and it's going to metabolize itself in order to feed me in an attempt. It'll burn up the muscle in an attempt, because keep in mind, your body doesn't know that you've reduced your calories. What it thinks is that I'm in a famine zone. I better do everything I can to protect this body, because at the end of the day, on your hard drive, your body's responsibility is to keep you alive. Oftentimes in training programs, I'm tugging on that button a little bit, putting your body under duress in order to get it to react. So if I'm not eating enough, my body's thinking, well, clearly there's not any food around because he's not eating enough. So it'll take that nutrients from your bones and your muscles in an attempt to slow your metabolism down so that you can eat, so you can survive on less calories. And we see that scenario all the time. I would say half the cases that I see from a nutrition standpoint is someone that was on a crazy diet years ago and they kind of wrecked their metabolism. Now, it's an easy fix. But for the most part, because we've got a different idea about what it takes to eat. We're always in this I gotta eat less, and the less I eat, the faster. Now, again, your body will interpret that as famine. Some people get stuck, and out of that 50% of people, about 25% of them, we got to get them to eat more to lose weight. Counterintuitive, and that is such a hard hurdle to jump, because constantly, from the TV, from things you read, from things that are being sold, from advertisement, they're constantly reinforcing that you should be eating less. And for the most part, we should. We're getting, especially in the US, we're getting way more calories than our bodies really need. I think I read that the average caloric consumption of a US adult is 4,800 calories in a day. Way too much. That's two people. 4,800, that should be like 5 days of food, all right? You know, if you're really restricting your calories. But again, at the end of the day, it comes back to input output. If I've got that many, now your body can't possibly absorb that many calories, but what you've basically done is done the reverse of like a vitamin, where I've given my body the capacity to store as much fat as it possibly can, right? Instead of being at or below your caloric intake. You talk about strategies and tricks of the trade. From a metabolism standpoint, at the end of the day, what I try to do as a trainer, if a person wants to get leaner, I want to get that basal metabolism to match their diet. Why do I want to do that? Your basal metabolism is literally how many calories it takes just to keep your body alive. So of course, every time we move, every movement we make, everything we do, your body's got to fuel itself off of calories. If I laid in bed all day and did nothing, still, heart's pumping, my body's feeding my muscle, I'm moving nutrients, that caloric count, that's your basal metabolism, right? If that equals your diet, on days you don't exercise, if you move one inch during the course of that day, let's say you laid down all day, if you rolled over, you're in the reserve tank. You just burn some body fat, right? Which makes it nice and easy. We're going to have those days where you're not able to exercise. Heck, on a hot summer day and taking a walk, you're going to get way more out of that, because your body's working harder to keep you cool. And if your basal is eating up all of your food anyway, we're in fat burning mode, right? That's also keep in mind that it's, from a percentage standpoint, it's the lower intensity activities that burn the highest percentage of fat. Not the highest percentage of calories, but definitely the highest percentage of fat. Hey, any one of us right now just sitting here, granted, hoping that if you're not sipping on a glass of wine or had a piece of pie or just ate, if you don't have any fuel in your body right now, you're probably burning about 5 to 6 calories just sitting here for 10 minutes. Out of that 5 or 6, at minimum 4.5 of that's coming from your body fat cells. Now let's take that same 10 minutes. Let's put you on a treadmill, bicycle. Let's run you uncomfortably hard on one of those. Now, that caloric burn may kick up to 25, 30 within that same 10 minutes, but still your body's only burning 5, 6 calories coming from your body fat, maybe, right? So why am I busting my hump to burn all these calories in it, do it. Because still at the end of the day, it comes back to input output. If I'm burning enough calories that I stay at that caloric deficit, then of course my body is in that Goldilocks zone at 250. You know, we really work hard and rack our heads in finding that Goldilocks zone. Sometimes it's trial and error. We tend to get it pretty much on the first try. Right. But also, of course, it takes your cooperation. That's why we're always harping you guys on making sure that you're tracking your foods, and we're sending you message. What did you eat? Is this all you ate yesterday? And those kind of things. Now, having said that, there are a lot of people that have been in the intermittent fasting and things like that, which is fine for a time, but no one should be living there. I mean, after a minute. Now, the advantages of doing intermittent fasting, anytime you put yourself at that fewer calories, remember, your body's job is to keep you alive. So it'll say, okay, apparently something that's going on out there that we haven't seen. She's not eating as much. Let's kick some enzymes into the system to heal a few things. So you can really heighten your growth hormone and your body's ability to repair itself by doing intermittent fasting for a time. What is that time? Sometimes, I fast once a week. Typically on a Sunday, for my last meal on Sunday evening to my first meal on Monday, I try to put about 18 hours in there where I have 0 calories, right? Now, a strategy that I've used on some of you guys is carb cycling. But what that is doing is giving the same effect as intermittent fasting without cutting back on your calories. Right. So a super simple carb cycle would be, let's put that 18 hours Sunday. And then on Monday, I'm just giving myself vegetables and proteins. Why? Because remember, body's got to work harder on those proteins. Most of those vegetables are at a caloric deficit. So I've just come out of a fast where my body hasn't had any fuel. So my muscles are literally starving for fuel. I throw those vegetables in, I'm going to get enough carbohydrate out of those vegetables to spike my insulin a little bit to make better protein synthesis out of the proteins that I'm putting in. I may do that for 2 days. And then on Wednesday, it's a heavy carbohydrate at breakfast. So I'm talking like wheat bread. I might do some sweet potatoes and eggs, which are awesome, by the way. I know it doesn't sound like it should go together, but it's pretty good. But something that's a little bit heavier in my carbohydrate. So now my body's like, woo, woo, we get some carbs, right? So I'll have carbs usually on that third day for the whole day, even dinner. And then on that next day, on a Thursday, whoop, pulling the rug out from under my metabolism. I may do a day like I did on Monday and Tuesday. Now I'm creating inertia in my metabolism in order to have to dip into my body fat for storage, because I'm keeping it all balanced. Same way we talk about muscle confusion and exercise, your diet kind of works the same way. All right, we want to keep it off balance. Now, having said that, most people don't eat much more than 8 or 9 different items. That's about it. I always try to tell people, diversify your diet, especially your proteins. Trying to get a combination of between my eggs, cottage cheese, flesh of beast, that's any kind of meat, and I would put a fish in a different category than meat. So between those 4, I've got everything that my body needs. I got my quick proteins. I got my slow protein. Heck, throw on top of that every now and again a protein shake. If I know that my body needs some energy, I want to feed my muscles, I'm short on my count, kind of use your supplementation as exactly the way it's described to supplement what you're doing in your natural diet. All right. Now, we've had people have to, make some adjustments, use a shake as a meal, but we don't want to stay in that mode for too long. It's always better to go natural. But there are some really good grades of protein out there that you can surely get away with that. I talked about UMP, that Orgain protein from Costco is really good. Usually any companies that are making a pea-based protein, just the process by which they do it doesn't require a whole lot of process. Most of those are pretty good. But again, be careful about your labels. Most supplements that you see on the shelves, some kid in his garage that made it. I mean, ever since deregulation dropped, it's true as day as long, because the FDA is not involved in supplements. So, heck, I could say that there's 40 grams in there. There's no check and balance to make sure that actually exists. Right? So you got to be super careful and try to go to places that have a reputation for making good product. Any other questions that you guys have for me?
Yeah, David, this is Carol. I was just wondering if, I know we need to drink lots of water, but do we need to do the pH water?
Not at all. Not at all.
Not at all?
No.
Okay.
Your body kind of will figure that out on its own. Now, it's not a bad thing to do it, and it surely makes a balance, but the moment you pour that pH water in your body, it changes its pH. Now, I've heard, your pH, your alkaline waters and things like that. And of course, the companies that are writing these testimonials and ledgers are trying to sell the water. So they kind of oversell it. One of the craziest that I've seen is it was water. They said that it had extra oxygen in it. I'm like, you can't add extra oxygen to water; it becomes something else. but it's not a bad practice because, of course, that alkaline water will draw your system in a little bit quicker, but it may happen a little bit faster than your regular water, right? Unless, of course, you've had some issues with your pH being off. That's a different story. But for most people, your body will definitely balance that out, as long as you're not putting the acidic things into your system. And keep in mind, you're getting hydration from other places, right? Of course, your food. We talked about your showers, things like that. I mean, your skin is the biggest organ that you have. Think of it this way. Everything that you come in contact with, everything that you smell has to be filtered by your kidney and your liver. Makes it a little more interesting in where you're sitting and the places that you go. But anyway, you can get in there. Hey, coffee is one of the best catalysts to burning body fat, and you get quite a bit of coffee's not quite the diuretic that we thought it was previously. Got a lot of antioxidants in it. Obviously, the caffeine is going to help speed your metabolism up. If you're not sensitive to it, not a problem. There is a limit to how much caffeine you should take, but if it's not disturbing your sleep or anything, you can get pretty high with it.
So I started back at the 6 a.m.s yesterday.
Yes.
And the day before. I didn't today because I had a big Reiki day. I didn't want to unload in the morning.
Wise.
So yesterday and Monday, all day, and I know this is normal, I just wanted to eat and eat and eat. Like most of my food, like calories and macros and stuff, were gone by 11 o'clock.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I just started eating littler bits because I didn't want to go over or anything like that. I just started eating littler bits, like more often. How is that helpful? Like I'll know now to eat littler bits starting right after the workout so that I'm spreading my food better. I'm not feeling hungry, but how is it that made it more helpful by having just smaller meals?
Well, you're hitting that satiation point just by giving yourself a little bit of fuel. Like an old strategy is eat until you're 80% full. That's probably all your body really needs. Plus, I love the idea of what I call throwing kindling on your fire all day long. Smaller meals, again, back to making your body have to run that digestive cycle that many times makes a difference in how many calories you burn. Though I'm more curious about that you are that hungry, which tells me that your metabolism is speeding up. If you wake up in the morning and you're famished, that's one of the best things that could happen to you. If you wake up in the morning, I really don't want anything to eat, I don't want to force myself, you're probably in storage mode. So,
I'm hungry all the time, but I couldn't even, even after I ate a meal, I was hungry. I had a sandwich with lots of meat and cucumbers and stuff in it, and I still wanted more food. I finished eating, I drank some water, and I was telling Megan, because we were talking, I was like, I can't get full. I just want to eat and eat and eat.
Okay.
And drinking the water wasn't helpful.
Okay. Yeah, so oftentimes if a person's thirsty, they'll get hunger signals. But I know how much water you drink. Yeah, that surely wouldn't be. And I just think we're falling into that summer thyroid where your body's calling for more calories. Keep in mind, most people are 6 to 8 quarts of fluid. The analogy I always use is if I had for all you science fans, if I had a 8-quart tub of water and I put that on the stove, how much energy would I have to add to that just to change it by 1 degree? Tremendous amount of energy just to change the temperature of water, which is, why you go down to why water temperatures change so much slower than air or even land is because it will hold its temperature a little bit longer. But I've got to add an extreme amount of energy to that water just to change it by 1 degree. think of your body as doing that work constantly. So when summer rolls around, I'm sweating a little bit more. I'm losing a little bit more water. My body's got to work harder to cool itself, and I'm working out and eating the type of food that are putting me at a caloric deficit or making my body work harder. That's a guaranteed way to make sure that your metabolism is flying. Right? And heck, at the end of the day, I love spinning them out of control. It's a good problem to have where we're losing too fast. We got to add more calories in order to keep your body from dipping into your muscle.
That makes sense. So tomorrow, because tomorrow I'll be at the 6 a.m., I'll start with a smaller meal after and just start with smaller meals instead of starting normal and then going smaller. I'll start with smaller and put them closer together. Yeah. You know, like a couple hours.
Always a good strategy.
And then see what happens.
Absolutely. And even I would even do, because it's that early, I'd even play with my fuels in a way of, okay, one morning maybe I'm going all protein. The next I may go a combination of protein and carbohydrates. On a third morning, I may do that workout fasted, but have something at the ready immediately. Typically, something that's a complex carbohydrate and a protein. So again, playing with that insulin spike. When we always talk about when your insulin is elevated, your body stores body fat at a higher rate, but we rarely mention that it can also make muscle at that same rate when your insulin is elevated. I'm an advocate of always making sure that regardless of what kind of carbohydrate I get, whether that's simple or complex, make sure that you have as much, if not more, protein with that same meal. And then a great strategy from a diet standpoint that I've never seen fail is try to get most of your carbohydrate consumption in before 12. Get your carb macros in before 12 or 2 o'clock. You're still going to get some carbs residually from your vegetables and things like that. But I usually teach people after 12, after 2 o'clock, depending upon the individual, go straight green and protein. Because now that old rule that you shouldn't eat past 8 o'clock or that's where that comes from. Because mostly, if I put in something my body can break down easier, it can get it into storage easier. As soon as I go to bed, before I even hit REM, my body has already elevated my growth hormone. If your growth hormone is elevated on top of an insulin spike, on top of a cheap fuel that can put into my body, that's how people are gaining weight at night. It was a formula for storage. So in order to wind out of that, green and protein after 12, 2 o'clock. But again, at the end of the day, to round it out, keep yourself hydrated. That kills half of the work that you have to do. Simply that. There's a direct correlation between your hydration and your body's ability to burn body fat and how lean you are. All right, you guys. Everybody, thanks for coming. Enjoy your evening, and we will see you very soon. Absolutely. Thank you.